So, it's been a while since I've talked about my favorite wall-crawling hero. A bit too long. But with the release of Tom Holland's fourth Spider-Man movie around the corner, my general overwhelming excitement for the movie, and my ever-growing need to go to one of the red carpet events, I decided to finally start to read the Spider-Man Brand New Day storyline. And before I read this, I figured it was an important story in the Spider-Man mythos. It's on my very long list of comics to read before I fully dive back in the Spider-Man movie retrospective I started years ago, but I didn't know how important and how much modern Spider-Man is affected by this one era of comics for him. And I would argue if you're a fan of Spider-Man, haven't read a Spider-Man comic, and everything you know about him comes from the cartoons, the movies, and or the very great Insomniac games, this would be a great starting point for any new Spider-Man comic reader. But I am getting ahead of myself. So sit back, relax, and let's talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day, the comic, what I want to see for the movie, and why you should read it. So, what is the Brand New Day era? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a fresh new start for the Spider-Man mythos. See, with a lot of comics, especially with things coming from DC or Marvel, characters tend to go on for a very long time. You either become a household name and have 60 plus years of storytelling and lore, or you become a short-lived character that ends up forgotten to time. So in a way, to get new readers, they end up reboots and new number ones. The reboots can be either as big as a whole universal reboot, like we see multiple times over in DC, or smaller character-centric reboots like Marvel. So with Spider-Man, they felt like a middle-aged married Peter Parker is less relatable than a 20-something-year-old down on his luck Peter. So Marvel editorials decided to sell his marriage to the devil. So the two big events before this was Marvel Civil War, a vet comic that did get a movie adaptation in the MCU. So you should have a general idea about what happened in the comics. A very bad disaster causes government entities to want to hold heroes accountable, all while trampling on the hero's privacy. And during the aftermath of this, one more day happened. So because of the event of Civil War, specifically Spider-Man revealing his identity to the entire world, this puts a target on Peter's back. And because of this, Aunt May gets shot because Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, put on a hit on Spider-Man. The bullet meant for Pete was about to kill his last parental figure. So, in a last-ditch effort, after going and pleading to every great mind he could think of, both Peter and MJ shut off their marriage and their future daughter to Mephisto, erasing a marriage that lasted roughly 20 years to get back to a status quo of a down-on-his-luck Peter Parker trying to balance two separate identities, and thus starting a brand new day of Spider-Man. Like I said, this is a new status quo for Peter, a back-to-basic approach to the character. It's even touted as that in every promotional material you can find for the big omnibus. No one knows Peter is Spider-Man. He is back at the Daily Bugle, living with Aunt May, and single. The book starts out with him admitting that he hasn't been Spider-Man for a while now, mostly because he is a fugitive. Because he showed the past 20 years of his lore, a lot of things changes. History was legitimately rewritten to fit this narrative. So although he did apparently unmask himself during the events of Civil War, things happened that he didn't fully agree with and is now a unlicensed hero. A lot of the book is not only us the readers trying to figure out what changed and what stayed the same during this run, but leaves us with this mystery to try and figure out how much truly has changed. And that's even more prominent with a character named Jackpot. Now, if you're a Spider-Man fan like me, when you hear Jackpot, you probably think of Mary Jane Watson. MJ's version of Jackpot uses a device on her wrist that acts like a slot machine. Depending on the symbols that she pulls, she gets a unique ability. A admittedly cool power, just wish it wasn't tied to a certain someone. This version of Jackpot has a standard superhero abilities. You know, super strength, speed, durability, stuff like that. And for a while, the secret identity of her was a mystery. The thing is, he looks almost identical to MJ, and even showed up saying her famous catchphrase from the first ever time we see her in the comics. And with new heroes, we get new villains. A few one-offs, something that only really lasts a few issues, like Freak, a drug-addicted man who drank chemicals found in Doc Connor's lab, thinking it's another meth lab, and becoming this Mambo-like abomination that'll adapt to anything if it gets killed by it. So if he gets shot, he'll grow thicker hide. Drowned, he can now breathe underwater. Then there's my favorite new character, Paper Doll, a girl who was accidentally flattened by her father's dimensional compressor. Don't ask me what it is. It wasn't even explained in the comics all that much. She ended up locked in her room watching a bunch of movies starring a character named Bobby Carr and finding comfort in his movies to the point that she starts overly obsessing over him and killing people who talk badly about him. And honestly, it's one of the more emotional stories in the Brand New Day 1, in my opinion. Something about this lonely girl just looking for comfort in a very rich superstar who's honestly trying to live his life, all while taking aim at those sleazy type paparazzi that plagued the early 2000s, like TMZ at its worst. Cause that's exactly what the DB turned into. After Jameson gets a heart attack, his wife sells the company to Dexter Bennett and really makes some interesting choices with it. And from there, it really shakes up the Daily Bugle. Robbie leaves, Betty becomes more of a cutthroat reporter. Peter, for a while, is basically the scene from the 90s Spidey show, just cause of how much money Dexter is throwing at him.
First one to get a photo of the lizard for my nightly news gets a $1,000 bonus.
Color or black and white?
Then we get Martin Lee. His origin comes from this one of the comics. Much like in the Insomniac games, he lived a double life as a rich philanthropist running the homeless shelter Feast and the triad-like mob boss trying to take over New York. And I feel like you can't talk about Lee without talking about the white elephant in the room, Anti-Venom. So Eddie Brock was at Feast. He is truly down on his luck. He has cancer. Him and the Venom symbiote are separate at this time, and with the touch of Martin Lee, he was reborn into Anti-Venom. Now, Anti-Venom has this whole weird personality about killing people, especially ones who had the Venom symbiote for any given time. Also, the closer he gets to Spider-Man, the less Spidey's powers works. Speaking of returning bad guys, thanks to the rewriting of history, the Osborns are back. Harry died back in Spectacular Spider-Man 200 back in 1993. He was dead and stayed dead for at least 15 long years. And Norman is still doing Norman things, including making a squad to take in Spider-Man. And while Norman is still the same person as always, Harry spent a lot of his time trying to make things right with people. Both from lost times, cause again, one more day rewrite. In universe, his death was faked and Norman sent him to Europe for drug treatment, and for messing things up with people like Liz Allen. There's also a new Goblin, because there's always a new Goblin. Now I know that I'm not going into real in-depth details about the characters and what's happening in these comics, because trying to condense an omnibus and a half worth of comics along with the supplemental material, the history of the characters, and just everything else is already a monumental task. I haven't even talked about Jameson the First or the wonderful single issue about Flash, and
no, I don't think I will.
Actually, I want to talk about the Flash issue. Back in 1967, Flash Thompson ends up joining the military to go to war, and is one of the things that they kept from pre-Brand New Day timeline. The entire issue revolves around Flash recounting an incident that led him to be hospitalized while overseas. We see his thought process and see how much he admires Spider-Man and basically thinking, what would Spidey do? It is a great story and shows the impact that Spider-Man has on people. The issue ends with the reveal that because of his heroics, he lost both of his legs. Now, part of my job I'm hoping for in this video is to tell you just enough to go out and buy the comics, because I do think it is worth the read, and I think if you're brand new to comics, and are a fan of Spider-Man, that this would be on my list of a good starting point, even if you throw out the one more day of it all. And it's a small miracle that it really does work well like that. And originally, I was going to suggest getting the Brand New Day compact that Marvel released recently. It's small, it has a beautiful cover, it's cheap, like $10, but I have issues with this. Hey, Future Justice here. I cut out a rant that was supposed to be here. Gonna re-record it for short form, so subscribe for that. Let's take it back to past Justice. Now, let's talk about the movie. Now, much like the comic book counterpart, this is marketed as a brand new start for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. When we last saw him in No Way Home, he was alone. No more Aunt May, no more Tony, no more Avengers, no Happy, Ned, or MJ. For all intents and purposes, Peter Parker is no more. There is only Spider-Man. But I think that despite it being a back-to-basic story, it has to be an emotional human story. And given what Tom has said, then there's a huge hope for that. But I also want them to give a spotlight to Peter's cast of characters. A gripe that I have with newer Spider-Man comics is that Marvel editorials doesn't know what to do with a lot of them. Like for something like MJ being Jackpot, it kinda makes sense in my eyes. She has been everything under the sun. Actress, model, club owner, Tony Stark's secretary, you name it, she probably has done it. Peter's friend group used to be big, but most of them are dead, and what little's left don't get bought up or just fade into obscurity. And I want Spider-Man 4 to at least give us some of that. That was honestly some of my favorite moments in the Home trilogy, seeing Peter's classmates and friend group react and interact with Spider-Man. And if MJ and Ned are in here, might as well show how not remembering their closest friend at all affected them. Because the stories where we see Peter's effect on those closest to him, both the good and the bad, help make this comic run a easy recommendation. And the more I sit here, looking at the marketing for the movie, remembering the stories that impacted me in the first volume of the omnibus, is that while yes, there are consequences for actions, Peter's risk in No Way Home, Flash's time in the war, Betty's choices as a journalist, and everything around the Osborns. But as long as you want to do better or aspire to be someone you admire or even have a good friend behind your back, there will always be a brand new day to try again and pick yourself back up. Because that's what Spider-Man would do.